Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. The Doctoral Academy reconvenes after our 2-week break, during which we presented our first supervisors course to supervisors in the College of Health Sciences. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome Buhle Donda. You'll see her on your screen, actually, is Buhle Setole. I had the pleasure of supervising her in her PhD, which she finished last year. She is a mature student with a very long pedigree in education, passionate about education and about learning, and we're very fortunate that she's now decided to turn her attention to postgraduate education and education in research as her major field of interest and of study. And she's going to speak to us this afternoon. One of the talks she gave at the supervisor course I thought was so useful and so helpful that I asked if she would mind giving it again at this forum. Buhle, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Buhle Donda. I think Prof. just introduced me. I am an educationist, but I have developed a passion in medical education, and up to so far, I am really enjoying it. You will have to bear with me. I'm having load shedding. I think at 4, I might break so as to be able to report. So that shouldn't take much of the time, but it should happen at 4. So I will share my screen. Let's start with the presentation. My topic today is mentorship in a PhD study, support, growth, and possible success within the mentorship relationship. I thought it would be good just to mention how mentoring originated. And mentoring is found in the Greek mythology. And it is a story that is told by Homer, and he tells of a king, King Odysseus, who was fond of fighting and was a hero. So he would actually leave his own home to go and fight his wars. And then unfortunately, his son was actually growing, and he had reached a stage of becoming a man. And now he couldn't stay and actually take care and guide his son into manhood. So he had a friend, Telemachus, who he thought was fit enough to can actually handle that duty. And it is the friendship between Odysseus that actually prompted him to ask Telemachus to tutor his son. And it was, and the one thing that he had observed was that Telemachus was wise and loyal. And it is said that he was able to execute this duty in a recommendable way. And then most people actually thought that this mentoring idea would be a very good idea to guide someone into becoming an expert in any other field. And then the definition that follows after was based on the type of mentorship that existed between the originator of mentorship. However, we do understand that as time went by, there were improvements and change of perspectives into how academics, how people in general looked at mentoring. However, the original definition was such that mentoring is defined as building a purposeful and personal relationship in which a more experienced person, which is a mentor, provides guidance, feedback, and support to facilitate the growth and development of a less experienced person, usually a mentee. Like I said, this has changed a lot, and even more with the pandemic and its promotion of the internet as the platform where most of the things can happen. So forms of mentorship that we have today have actually evolved a lot. So instead of the diets that we had from the beginning, where an experienced mentor will actually be mentoring a novice, and that has changed into many different forms. And now we have group mentoring, and group mentoring, you find that it's one mentor that is mentoring a number of students at the same time. And sometimes you may find that it's a number of mentors mentoring a number of students, depending on the ratio. And so much has been written and experienced through peer mentoring. Peer mentoring usually is informal, but then it has been found that even though it is informal in most instances, it is quite effective, where you find that, peers actually mentor, guide, support, give feedback, and guide each other to success. And then we have distance or e-mentoring, where you find that the mentee and the mentor actually find each other on an internet platform, because it's either of distance or it's the most convenient way of doing it. But however, the purpose is still the same. And then we have reverse mentoring. Reverse mentoring is when you find that a person, yes, is a novice in terms of the number of years that he has entered the field. However, it so happens that the person is coming with an expertise that most experts in the field do not have. And therefore, you find that a younger person who, in terms of the number of years in service, is still a novice, but because of the fact that he's an expert in that particular aspect, that person can actually mentor a seasoned mentor. However, when you look at PhD studies, you will find that most effective supervisors do comment that they learn a lot when they are supervising students, because some kind of reverse mentoring tends to happen, especially when the student is now gaining momentum and really getting the grasp of the topic and becoming, in inverted commas, an expert in the field. And then there is an element of speed mentoring. Speed mentoring has been around for a little while, but now it is becoming popular because one of the things that has been discovered is that usually when people are introverts, they find it very, very hard to can actually find someone to can actually initiate mentorship relationships. And again, speed mentoring can be done using internet. And speed mentoring is called speed mentoring because it is based on the same concept as speed dating. What actually happens is that whoever organizes these sessions finds a pool of mentors and a pool of mentees. And then you sit and you give each other 8 to 10 minutes for a session, and then you decide as to how the rotations will be structured. And so, for instance, you can say each mentee will rotate among 3 mentors. And then as they rotate, they only take 8 minutes. And you may provide them with questions that will prompt discussions or not. However, the idea is that the mentee gets to be introduced to more than one mentor. And then at the end of the session, the mentee has a right to choose a mentor within this circle, or take the experience from the session to actually choose another mentor outside the speed mentoring sessions. And obviously, the one-on-one mentoring has always been the diet that was referred to between Telemachus and the king's son. And then when you look at the literature, this is a review that was done by Nora and Crisp in 2007. And they found that in the mentoring literature, there are 4 latent constructs that tend to be found in the literature. And then one is that within a mentoring relationship, you tend to find that there is psychological, emotional support that is inherent in it. And if anyone has ever been in a supervisor-student relationship, you will always notice that the support that is being given ranges from academia, yes, but then it will go to psychological and also emotional support, because we all know that this journey is not an easy journey. And one of the most important features of this emotional and psychological support is the ability to listen. And when people do listen to each other, then you find that the psychological and the emotional support is enhanced. And it's easy to identify problems, and again, providing encouragement, because one may have his or her heart set on something. However, when you try to do it and you experience challenges, and at some point when you feel overwhelmed, yet then you get discouraged. And it is very important to have a mentor that is able to can say to you, don't despair. This is you. This happens all the time. Most people have actually survived this. You can also survive it. And then again, it is very important that there are goals that are set within the mentor-mentee relationship. And these goals obviously will have undertones of career paths. And during a PhD in particular, the goal would be finishing the PhD. And some do argue and say, that is not the goal of a PhD. The goal of a PhD basically is to produce new knowledge. And then again, that should be made clear to the mentee, so that the mentee can actually, learn much from the interaction. And obviously, the mentor will assist with setting academic, career goals, and decision making. And then the third domain is academic subject knowledge, support, and institutional support. So the mentor will actually have to assist the mentee with the acquisition of necessary skills and knowledge, educating, evaluating, and challenging the mentee academically. And I always feel that when people refer to issues of respect between a mentor and the mentee, it is more, people would quickly think of the etiquettes, how many times you say please and how many times you say thank you. However, it is more about feeling that there is equality in terms of how the mentee and the mentee relate to each other. Like there is no talking down to each other, but talking at the same level in terms of challenging the mentee academically and encouraging the mentee to always think in an academic way that is a potential of creating an expert in future. And then obviously, the last latent construct that Nora and Crisp observed was role modeling. So it is the mentee's ability to learn from a mentor's present and past actions and achievements and failures. And obviously, this requires reflecting. And if the mentee doesn't reflect, and also the mentor has to reflect, but the mentee in particular, because each time you have an experience with your mentor, sometimes you get disappointed because here you are with something that you think is brilliant and the feedback is not that great. However, if you step back and you really think about the feedback, the comments, and you think level-headedly to say, this is not about me, but this is about the work that I have produced. And if I actually take these advices and put them into test, then I am going to progress towards my goal. And then it is very important to can actually learn from what the mentor actually models, because sometimes when a person teaches you something, the person needs just to model it and for you to absorb it and to grasp it. And obviously you can't be a copycat. You filter it through and you realize why it is done in this way, and you choose which way you want to do it if you feel like you can't really copy the style of the mentor. And then why talk about mentoring in a PhD study? Some have argued strongly that mentoring is an integral truth for student success. And it is not always the best students who get through graduate programs. It is the endurance and the perseverance, and the most common word that is used is resilience. So if you are a resilient student rather than a brilliant student, of course, brains are needed, but you need to endure, you need to persevere, you need to understand. And therefore, mentoring actually provides a tool to can actually enhance the students' ability to endure and to persevere. And if you look at the literature that looks deeply into resilience, resilience is understood in many ways. And the characteristics of a resilient person involve the ability to plan. And if you have a mentor, in this case, your supervisor in a PhD study, that is able to plan, then that is easy for you as a student to can actually be assisted to follow the same plan, devise your own plan, and then actually finish on schedule. And then again, you find that you need to be in control of the environment. And really, we all know that confidence is only built when you are able, when you think that you are in control. Yes, there'll be challenges, but you are in control. And then when you have self-efficacy, which is I can and I will do this. And then actually, if the mentoring, if the mentor is able to bring the best out of you, then you are able to succeed. And then a PhD supervision is an epitome of mentoring, definitely, because most of the features of a mentor are inherent in a PhD supervisor. Because when you look at it, as a PhD supervisor will actually move from giving psychosocial support at some point, academic support at some point, and financial support, not in terms of giving their own money, but in assisting with accessing grants, and again, institutional support as well. So those are some of the key responsibilities of a supervisor. And in this term, in this instance, we're talking as a supervisor more of a mentor than just a supervisor. And the bottom line for a mentor is that you learn from what I do and be what you want to be. And we can attest to this, that as a PhD student, when you start your study, you have a vague idea of what you want to do, and you tend to rely more on your supervisor. But as the supervisor gives you a chance to can actually try some of the things out, like can we decide on a topic, and can you choose a theoretical framework, and can you think of the objectives and the aims of the study. Even though the supervisor is going to be helping and assisting with this, as they give you leeway to do so, they are actually saying to you, learn from what I do and be what you want to be, as opposed to do as I do and be what I am. Because usually, like for instance, if you are in a coaching situation and you have a coach will actually say, do as I do and be what I am, or rather do as I say and be what I want you to be. A typical example is that of soccer players. Some coaches have never been soccer players in their lives, but they are able to turn good soccer players into international stars. And again, they always say that if I get a player, I know what I want my player to do. I know what my player should be like, and I even know how I want my players to behave in and outside the field. So that is not what a mentor does. The mentor only models and expects that when you learn, you just learn some of the things that they do and do better, or add your own perspective so that you become your own expert. And mentoring relationships have character and they have a purpose. And a few writers have actually, a few authors have actually thought of ways to characterize a mentorship, and they've used metaphors. Kram has used steps, Awaya et al. Have used a journey, and some have used a metaphor of a dance. And there are many other examples of how one can actually view and perceive what a mentoring relationship should be. And if you look at Kram came with 4 stages of a mentoring relationship. And the first stage is preparation. And if you look at a PhD study, the preparation is when you actually conceptualizing the study, conceptualizing the topic itself. And again, as you are preparing for starting the study, you are also in preparation of how you are going to conduct the relationship between a student and the supervisor. And there is initiation in terms of initiating this relationship. And you have to negotiate, because if the relationship is not negotiated, and if the topic is not negotiated, the theoretical frameworks are not negotiated, because once the supervisor is taking the lead, he also should be able from time to time to actually make the student feel and own the study, so that the student is the owner of the study, and the student can find what exactly is fascinating him or her in deciding to undergo that study. And the relationship must enable growth. And like most people will tell you that most supervisors will focus on the students when the student is still, protocol writing stages and what have you. And when the student is now analyzing, the student has actually grown confident psychologically and academically. And he talks of a stage where you just close the relationship. And 9 out of 10 good mentorship relationships don't reach the stage of closure. Instead, they extend into a stage of friendship. And of course, here we are talking about not a peli-peli friendship kind of, we are talking about a professional friendship where you actually become close associates more or less, where you can discuss personal things, but you find that most of the time it is about academia and furthering the abilities of the mentee, and who would by that time maybe become an expert. And then Awaya looks at mentoring as a journey that describes a unique relationship between a mentor and a mentee. And the most important thing here is that they say it's a unique relationship, because even if you are in a cohort, you can have 10 mentors, 10 mentees, or 5 mentors and 10 mentees. You will find that the relationship with each mentor mentee within the bigger group will be unique. And what they observed is that what tends to be effective and what tends to make it work is when the relationship is characterized by trust. And trust is very important if you look at mentorship within a PhD study. You trust that your student is submitting his or her own work. And again, as a supervisor, when you give feedback, the student should actually know and trust that whatever feedback you are giving is honest feedback. And it is very discouraging if you get someone to say, a supervisor that say excellent, good, and you find that in the end, the standard of your PhD is questioned. And sharing of expertise, and the mentor is able to, actually there will be those moments when the supervisor will say to you, let me show you, this is how I usually do this. When, for instance, if I am to write a paper, this is what I actually start by doing. And those may be just small tips, but those tips can actually be the sharing of expertise, because once you understand why it is done like that and you start doing it like that yourself, you find that you have improved. And the sharing of expertise happens a lot in terms of writing in a PhD, because you feel when you're beginning, you just write, and then you think, you have written in a correct way, and you find that the supervisor says, no, you need to sound like a researcher, you need to sound like a scientist. And then as you keep practicing and writing, then you start to feel that you're gaining confidence and your writing skill improves. And moral support, again, is very important. And again, the most important thing within this relationship is knowing when to help and knowing when to sit back, because it is a very thin line between a supervisor that says, I'm going to assist my student, and a supervisor that say, I will assist, but I will let my student try out things. And if there are challenges, then I will chip in and assist. And that allows what we were talking about, that the student grows, the student becomes confident, because confident when you are doing a PhD study is very important, because if you are doubting yourself, you are going to doubt your ideas, and you will end up relying more on your supervisor than on your own, and which becomes not helpful in terms of growing as a scientist. If you look at the pictures that I have, because if you look at mentoring as a journey, I did mention the fact that a mentoring relationship has character in the purpose. Now, if you look at the gentleman that is more like on a business trip, this might be a train or a bus, but he is so well organized, and you can see from the look that he is taking a very serious journey. But if you look at the overcramped train, there is too much risk there. And again, one can bet and say, this is a matter of survival. This is a trip to work. It's definitely not a trip for leisure. It is a trip a trip that involves a lot of risks. And I doubt very much that so much is calculated, but still, it is a journey. And if you look at the cruise, the cruise there is well organized, and it's classy, sheer opulence. And if you look at the other ship on the right, it's an old ship, or it's those that are
That'll just be a brief break while Maud reboots. She did warn us that she was expecting load shedding at 4 o'clock, and it would be necessary for her to reboot her computer. So if everybody could just remain patient for the next 2 or 3 minutes, and then she'll return. Thank you. While we're waiting, let me just share some information with you about a paper dating back to 2001, which was written by David Sackett. Some of you will have heard of him as the father of evidence-based medicine. He was a Canadian academic clinician, and he wrote a paper called On the Determinants of Success as an Academic Clinician, which I found very powerful reading, and I'll share the reference with you. I'm sure it's of interest to all, but particularly to clinicians. And he's trying to distill down what is necessary in one's professional life if one is to marry a professional practice as well as success as an academic and research. And he, along the way, alludes very powerfully to the need to have a mentor. So I'll put that up in a second and share that with people. It really is well worth reading. And I would also happily send it to anybody who wants to contact me and ask for it. Hello, Maud. I see your name is back on the screen. Are you able to continue? Well, I apologize for that. Obviously, she seems to be still having a problem. In fact, it's all suspiciously quiet. Can people hear me speaking?
Yes, Prof, we can hear you.
Okay. Perhaps I could just show you a little bit about that document while we wait. If somebody sees that Maud is ready to continue, please let me know.
Yes, I am.
Oh, right.
Sorry,
Glad you're back.
Father.
Would you like to carry on?
Yes, please.
Please continue.
Okay, Prof, 1 minute. Sorry about the information. I had to reboot. I was still saying that mentoring is a journey. Each journey has its own characteristics and its own purpose. And if you look at some of those journeys, these are different journeys, but what makes them different is that it's the purpose of the journey. Some, like where they're cramped, it's more of a survival kind of a journey that one would actually take if there is something really forcing them to. And you can't say that that is a calculated journey, because you can see that some of the people are not even inside the train, they are outside the train, and there is a lot of risk that is involved. So we wouldn't want to have a mentorship relationship characterized by such a journey. And you will find that there's a cruise, and that cruise is very organized, very elegant, and you can see that the purpose is for leisure, the purpose is for pleasure. And if you look at the other ship there, usually it's either that's an old and dated ship, or if it's something that's still working today, those are the ones that would be used by sea robbers for dodgy business. And it's quite the opposite of the luxurious cruise. And if you look at the flight there, it's the first class travel, and it's also leisure. And if you look at the astronauts there, and I believe that some of the passengers, they are not astronauts as such. Those are people who can afford to travel to space. And the level of trust in a spaceship, I can imagine that it is very much strong, because even the passenger that's going to be a passenger in the ship has to understand what to do, what not to do, precisely undergo training to make sure that they know how to survive should anything happen, and how to behave in the spaceship. And there is a lot of trust that a passenger places on the astronauts, because obviously they are not scientists. So, and it's well organized to the T. And one can choose as to what kind of a mentoring journey you would want to have as a mentee with your supervisor. Obviously, one can argue and say maybe the mentee doesn't have too much of a choice. But if both the mentee and the mentor are on on a same level of understanding, one can actually be able to transform any kind of a relationship into a better journey, maybe than the one that it started off as. And Fairbanks speaks of mentoring as a dance. And one of the things that one of the supervisors said when he was asked as to how he had experienced the mentoring relationship, he said, we were able to feed off each other. It wasn't me so much learning. I mean, I was learning, we were learning from each other. And there was a supervisor. And mentoring as a dance emphasizes this idea of being frank, this idea of assisting one another and understanding one another. It emphasizes this idea of mutual respect, of mutual understanding. And if you look at the dance, itself, it's got different genres. And if you look there, you will find that it's cha-cha-cha and it's waltz, I guess. And if you look at the one at the far right, it's choreography. And we know that when people are doing a choreography, the energy that gets into it is unlike the type of, you know, nice slow moves that will happen in a waltz when people are dancing waltz. And it's not what will happen when people are dancing cha-cha-cha. But however, each dance has a purpose, each dance is making a statement, and the people within the dance crew, they understand which move to take. They take their time to can actually come out with a statement and an understanding of what their moves express. And again, in a mentorship relationship, again, the mentor has to understand the roles that they're supposed to perform, and the mentee must understand the roles, and each must fight to avoid to step on each other's toes. And if the relationship is very professional and the relationship is effective, then there is no need of worrying about step. Instead, it's more like dance moves. When the mentor retreats, the mentee advances, and it's so much of a well synchronized and organized kind of a move. And the characteristics of a good mentor: a mentor will always have to encourage and demonstrate confidence in a mentee. And I've already spoken about this, that if people believe in you, then you can actually fly high. And if the mentor can recognize the mentee as an individual with a private life and value him or her as a person, and if you have a supervisor that values you as a person, then you find that even if there are instances when the supervisor maybe has been, you know, like telling you to do something and you're not doing it right, and may just, you know, pass an overstated comment. But if you really have if you really believe that this person is pushing me because he believes or she believes in me, then when you go home, you actually sit down and you think and you realize, oh, maybe he's pushing me because he thinks I can do this. And you start pushing yourself, because that is where this thing of getting encouraged by your supervisor comes in. And if the supervisor as a mentor ensures that there's positive and supportive professional environment. And this is done through things like, sometimes the supervisor says, I've been talking to some of my colleagues about your study. This is what they said we should maybe try and do. And, you know, you get that you are in a positive, you are in a supportive environment where everybody has something to say about what you are doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something good. And it has to be something that is going to make you grow. And good supervisors don't deny ignorance. I've been very lucky to have supervisors that have said to me, today I learned something from you. Today, I think we learned something together. And today I am going to teach you something. So those three instances for me have always been very clear cut, and I've really learned to understand when I have learned something from my supervisor and when we had both learned something at the same time, and when the supervisor will just say, you know, you have taught me something today, and it makes you feel good and encouraged to move forward. And when the supervisor is liberal with honest feedback, and that is very important, because you will learn, you have to know how high you need to raise the bar. And the supervisor has to encourage independent behavior, because the supervisor is not the one who is doing the PhD, you are doing the PhD. So in as much as you are being given support, you should be able to stand on your own. And respect, like I said earlier, it is the way you relate to each other, not so much about etiquettes, but about the level of idea exchange that happens between a mentor and a mentee. And a good mentee, obviously, you've got to be eager to learn. You must know your deadlines, try hard to meet your deadlines. Even if you happen not to meet your deadline, show that you have put some rigor in the way you have actually executed your tasks. And you have to be serious in the relationship. The supervisor can't continue being Mr. Nice or Miss Nice when you as a student are grumpy all the time, don't want to accept feedback, and each time people have to travel on eggshells if they want to say something to you. Yes, there are moments we've all cried. You will cry someday, but it's not like now people are going to avoid saying constructive things to you, because before you listen, you cry first and then you listen afterwards. So you gotta be resilient around this. And as a student, especially a PhD student, you've got to take the initiative. And obviously, as you mature and as your PhD progresses, you start standing ground and actually saying to a supervisor, but I think I like this idea, but I think I like that we should change this to this. And you become strong in voicing your opinions. And you have to be flexible, of course. There are moments, really, it is humanly possible, where a supervisor says, I wasn't able to actually, give you the work that you've handed in good thoughts. I've looked at it, but let's look at it together. Let's do this. Then you have to be flexible, because it's a two-way stream. And if you think it's all about you, then problems will crop up. And then acceptance of feedback comments. This is the most important one, because the relationship won't grow if between the two, one is very sensitive or the other is being insensitive. And then interest, if you show interest in your study, you force other people to actually respect what you are doing and understand what you are doing better. Excuse me. And respect is a two-way process. You earn respect. And as you show respect unto others, you construct yourself, and they read and they understand that you also are expecting to be respected. And the one thing that doesn't happen most of the time, mentors get to be trained. And it is very seldom that you find that mentees are being trained. And sometimes when you look at the relationships, the reason why the relationships don't prosper is because the mentees are not sure of what to do. It's either they are being too assertive, or they are actually, expecting too much from a supervisor as a mentor. And then characteristics of a good mentoring relationship will range from trust. Obviously, we've spoken about that. And respect has to be mutual. And there needs to be empathy, because a supervisor is a human being and a student is also a human being. And dialogue is important. When people don't dialogue, then they end up fighting over issues. If they have actually given each other a chance to speak, listen, then comment, then it becomes constructive rather than destructive. And commitment, obviously, availability, both for the student, for the mentee, and also for the mentor, because the supervisor as a mentor has to be available, because there is nothing frustrating like a supervisor that is not available. And also a student has to be available, so that the journey can actually be enjoyed by both. And then there is a need for a freedom to explore within acceptable boundaries, the student has to be given time to prove themselves. And then obviously, I always like to mention this one because we are human beings, and it's very easy to think that you know other people, and you can even vouch and say that I know him, I know her, I know so and so, I know this. And it's very difficult to know yourself. And this is a true reflection of that, where a mother crab was actually asking a baby crab to learn to walk straight. And the mother crab kept telling the small crab there, walk like me. And the small crab could not but see that the mother was actually crawling to the sides. And it went on and on and on until the baby crab said, okay, maybe I need to Google how this is done. We do not encourage this situation because this is a lack of understanding. However, we would like to encourage that mentors as supervisors, as mentors, should walk the talk. And then the mentees should actually, when a mentor models something, take mostly of the good things that your mentor does and not focus on the negative aspects. Otherwise, the relationship will not thrive. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Maud. I'm very glad that you're able to join us again after your little load shedding interruption. Thanks for a wonderful talk. And I really do hope that there'll be some questions, but particularly comments from the audience. Please, if anybody would like to say anything, please do. Let's have a little bit of discussion.
Did you play, boys? No, but did you have practice today?
No, but we had fun, and I think
That's
Maybe
fine.
you better mute yourself, Romola.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my word.
Right. Any questions or comments? Anybody who's been on either the giving or the receiving end of a mentorship relationship? I suppose there is a giving and a receiving, though Maud has made it very, very clear that it's actually very much a two-way street. The mentor learns as much from the mentee as the other way around. It's just in perhaps slightly different but complementary areas. No further comments? All right, well then let's say thank you very much to Maud. Maud, thanks for sharing that with us, and we look forward to hearing you talk again on the Academy. And goodbye to everybody else. We'll see you next Wednesday.